Alright, so here's the thing. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever watched an English video and understood almost everything? But the thing is, when it's your time to speak, your mind suddenly goes blank. I mean, you know the word, you know the grammar, but somehow nothing comes out, right? If this ever happened to you, well, don't worry because this is one of the most common problem English learners face. And honestly, I experienced the same thing when I was learning English, right? So today, I want to explain why this happens and what actually helped me fix it, all right? So let me tell you the real problem. Now, most people think the problem is vocabulary or grammar. But the thing is, in reality, that's not the real issue. But the real issue is understanding and speaking are two different skills, right? These are two different things that you need to understand in order to speak English, in order to learn English fluently. Now, when you watch an English video, right, the thing is, you're only listening, you're only taking information. It's like an input, right? It's called passive learning because you're doing something, it's passive, right? You're not producing any output, you're just taking inputs, right? So you can understand what's happening when you're watching videos, right? And when you're speaking, you're producing output. It's called an active skill, all right? Because your brain has to build sentences, it has to build words, it has to put it together, organize thoughts, and it has to be done in real time, right? So when you're talking to someone, right, the first thing you would do is that you would translate it from your native language, and then you check for grammar, whether or not it's correct, whether or not you're using correct words, right? And by the time you do that, well, the moment is already gone, all right? The conversation is already over. So I think that's the real problem. Now, there's this another habit of translating in your head. It's actually one of the biggest obstacles when you're learning English, to be honest. So when you translate every sentence, your brain becomes slow, right? Now imagine trying to have a conversation while solving a math problem at the same time. That's basically what translation feels like. Your brain is doing too much step. Because the thing is, instead of speaking naturally, you're constantly converting languages. And I realized this problem when I noticed something interesting. Native speakers don't translate anything. They just think and speak, and the words come out automatically. And I realized that if I want to speak more naturally, I had to train my brain to think directly in English, right? And that's what actually helped me. So what actually helped me? What did I do? Well, honestly, nothing complicated. I started doing something very simple. I began talking to myself in English. Yes, it might sound a little strange, but it actually helped me a lot. And whenever I was walking outside, I would describe what I saw. For example, the weather looks really nice today. I mean, it's kind of hot today in Mumbai. And, there are many people walking around here. Well, there's this restaurant down the street. It smells really good. Simple sentences. Nothing complicated. But the key point is that I was thinking and speaking directly in English, right? Slowly, my brain started getting used to it. I stopped translating, and speaking became much more easier for me, right? Now, another reason why people struggle with speaking, because they think English is fear of making mistakes, fear of sounding awkward, fear of being judged. But the truth is, mistakes are part of learning. When I was learning English, I made mistakes. Sometimes my sentences were wrong. Sometimes my pronunciation wasn't perfect, right? But every time I spoke, I learned something new. English is just a skill, just like riding bicycle or playing a sport. You improve by practicing and not by waiting until you're perfect, right? So if you understand English but struggle to speak, remember this. The problem is not your intelligence. It's probably not your vocabulary either. The real problem is that your brain is not used to producing the language yet. And the only way to change that is practice. Speak to yourself. Just describe your surrounding. Think in simple English. Over time, your brain will adapt and speaking will start to feel natural. Because at the end of the day, English is not just something you study. It is something you use. Alright? So how about you guys follow these tips in order to sound more natural? And how about you guys subscribe? Until then, have a good one.